we're live.
Welcome back to Prophecy 3 DNA, where we discover, decrypt, and demystify Bible prophecy, and then we apply it. My name is Donnie Alvarenga, and this is my brother, Don DeCuna, and we are honored to be facilitating the study of the Bible. And more recently, we have been diving into the seals and the trumpets and the churches in Revelation, and we just completed a cycle with the second church trumpet seal. And one of the things that we talked about way in the beginning of the study of Revelation is that the general gist of Bible prophecy is this: whatever happened to Jesus is going to happen to us. And we don't want to be on the receiving end of God following up on those that persecute his people, right? And this second church that we just read about, we got to see that, yes, there was some significant persecution and suffering of God's people. And yet God came back and he took care of those that were persecuting his people. And so today we're going to dive into a little bit more about how to apply this information, or how do we apply, or how's this applied, this information that we reviewed. Is there anything you wanted to add to that?
No, I think that was a good recap. So, can you go ahead and pray? Kick us off.
Yeah. So, our Father in heaven, thank you so much for all your many blessings, Lord. Thank you for your grace and your mercy in helping us kind of get a peek behind the scenes as to what's going on, and the assurance that you are always in control, and that there's no surprises for you, and that you win in the end. Join us in this study and help us understand your will. In Jesus' name I pray, amen.
Amen. All right, so there's our methodology, and now we'll go right back into it. So now we're going to go again with that biblical pattern, all right? That when religion and politics mix, persecution ensues, all right? What happened to Jesus? What happened to his followers? And God will remediate those who hurt his people, okay? Don't mess with God's woman, okay? Don't mess with God's church, all right? So now we're going to go over the second cycle. We're going to see how that aligned with what happened to Jesus and what happens to the people. Okay. So here we have pagan priests. Okay. We're going to cover all these things, which was the religious, plus the Roman emperor, which emperors in Rome, they were considered to be god men or God's men. Okay. In the sense that the gods ordained the specific person to be the leader of the Roman Empire because they embody everything that the gods, okay, quote unquote small g, right, want the people to see about them. Okay, the emperor is a reflection of the gods, right? In fact, in the Roman Empire, there was a cult of the emperor. Okay, so you can go and pray to the emperor. You can go and sacrifice to the emperor. So not only do you have these pagan religious priests, okay, that propped up and they were this intermediary between the gods and the leader. Okay, you also have that the Roman emperors themselves considered themselves, and the society at large considered them to be god men. Okay. And what we find here is that we now have Christian persecution. Okay? So let's see some of these pagan priests. All right, so go ahead and read the stuff that's highlighted here. This is in Wikipedia talking about the religion of Rome.
The priesthoods of most state religions were held by members of the elite classes. There was no principle analogous to separation of church and state in ancient Rome. During the Roman Republic, the same men who were elected public officials might also serve as augurs and pontiffs. Priests married, raised families, and led politically active lives. The augurs read the will of the gods and supervised the marking of boundaries as a reflection of universal order, thus sanctioning Roman expansionism and foreign wars as a matter of divine destiny.
Okay, so I think this is the key here. There was no principle analogous to separation of church and state during this time. In fact, what we'll read here in a minute is the priest class, they lived not just from the donations or the gifts that people would leave for the gods, but also they received almost like a stipend from the government. Okay, so it was very easy for the emperor to get what he wants, not just in political sphere, but also in the spiritual sphere, because he is, for all intents and purposes, subsidizing the lives of these priests and prelates. Okay, so they would be the ones that would kind of say, "This is what the gods want." Okay, now if the emperor wants to invade somewhere, how interesting it is that every single time the emperor wants something, the gods also want that very same thing. Okay? So these guys were all about, you don't want to bite the hand that feeds. Does that make sense? There was none of these priests were going to the leaders at the time, the Caesars or the emperors, and be like, "Hey, the gods are not happy with you." No, the gods are supremely happy with you if I'm happy and you're happy and everybody's cool. The people, not so much, but as long as we're making money, as long as I'm living in the lap of luxury, the gods are very happy with me, right? And here's the other thing too. They led politically active lives, okay? Very, very, they're inextricably linked. Does that make sense? All right. Let's read this. Oops. Sorry.
As the Romans extended their dominance throughout the Mediterranean world, their policy in general was to absorb the deities and cults of other peoples rather than try to eradicate them, since they believed that preserving tradition promoted social stability.
Okay, so one of the things, again, what Rome tried to do is say, "Hey, we don't want to beat them. We would rather join them." Okay? Very pragmatic in that sense. They're like, "I don't necessarily have to thrust my religious views on you as long as you don't thrust your religious views on me. If I want to adopt yours, great." Okay? This here, and I don't know if you remember when we did the study of Babylon and Persia in Greece, and we saw that the deities of Babylon, Persia, and Greece were the same. Remember that?
Mm-hmm.
Same deities, but different names. Slightly different backstories, but for example, there was a sun god in Babylon, in Persia, and in Greece. Well, guess what? There's that same sun god in Rome. So there isn't that much dissension or conflict between religions when you share kind of the same history. Does that make sense? It's like, oh, your sun god, yeah, they might call him Marduk. I call him Apollo. Does that make sense? So there's less friction there. But now when we think of Christianity, Christianity does not play nice with idolatry. Does that make sense? Because they have, one, a resurrected God, and two is that God is still currently alive and interacting with us. Does that make sense? So Christians never, well, I'm not going to say never because there were some that did. But the true Christians, especially during this time of Smyrna, they would rather die. Does that make sense? I would rather die than worship your God. Okay? My God died for me. I'm willing to die for him. All right? So Christianity didn't play nice here. Now, specifically, when the priest class is starting to notice that there's less people showing up for their rituals and their ceremonies, and they're like, my donation box is starting to dwindle. All right? What's going on here? Oh, have you heard of this Christus guy from Galilee and Judea that is this new God that everyone's worshiping? Does that make sense? They start being like, this is bad for business. Hey, emperors, the gods are upset now. There's this new God that is claiming supremacy, and that none of this is real, right? Our temples aren't real. I'm not a real priest. Does that make sense? People, this religious class, okay, they were none too happy. Okay, so they will be prompting the civil leaders to be like, these guys need to go. Bad for business. And what's bad for business for me means the gods are going to be upset with you. All right. Okay, we'll go to the next one. Sorry. All right. A little bit more information here. Go ahead and read that.
So Roman religio, which is religion, was an everyday and vital affair, a cornerstone of mos maiorum, Roman tradition and ancestral custom. It was ultimately governed by the Roman state and religious laws. State cult rituals were almost always performed in daylight and in full public view by priests who acted on behalf of the Roman state and the Roman people. Participation in public rites showed a personal commitment to the community and its values. Official cults were state funded as a matter of public interest.
All
Res
right.
Publica.
So here, a couple of things. Participation in public rites showed a personal commitment to the community and its values. So if Christians did not participate in these public rites, what did they think about their commitment to the community and its values?
Right.
They were not seen favorably. Okay. Also, they are state funded because it's a matter of public interest. Okay. I'm paying for your sewage system. Give me your taxes and I will make the roads. I will make the sewage systems. I will build parks and these buildings. But what I will also do is I will build your temples. Because again, I don't want to upset the gods. Okay? And if the gods are mad at me, aka the emperor, then that means they're going to punish me through you guys. And so it's a public interest that we keep the gods happy. Right? Read this. You made it.
The highest authority within a community usually sponsored its cults and sacrifices, officiated as its priests, and promoted its assistants and acolytes. Specialists from the religious colleges and professionals such as haruspices and oracles were available for consultation. With the abolition of monarchy, the collegial power and influence of the republic pontifices increased. By the late Republican era, the flamines were supervised by the Pontifica Collegia. The supervision of the Vestals and their rights fell to the more politically powerful and influential Pontifex Maximus. Public priests were appointed by the Collegia. Once elected, a priest held permanent religious authority from the eternal divine, which offered him lifetime influence, privilege, and immunity. Religious law was collegial and traditional. It informed political decisions, could overturn them. In traditional Roman practice, a priest drew no stipend. Permanent priesthood was best sought or granted after a lifetime service in military or political life, or preferably both.
Okay, so what it says here about it, Juno stipend, means this. They couldn't go and get a paycheck for their things. But what did they get? They got some really, really cool places to live in. They got some really, really beautiful buildings that they were responsible for. They got the choice foods. Okay. They got, they could do business with religious lands. Okay. So they didn't get a paycheck, but they lived in the lap of luxury. Does that make sense? Okay. You don't necessarily have to make a dime if you don't have to spend a dime. Right? But let's look at a couple of things here. They would not only inform political decisions, but they could overturn them in the sense that the gods might not be happy with this situation. All right? So it was very easy for them to skew even the civil authorities, because if the civil authorities are starting to, for example, they'll be like, why, let's say I'm a king and I'm like, why am I spending so much money on these guys? And then I start saying, hey, we need to start doing some cuts here because we're having lots of expenditures and we're not making as much taxes. Let's start cutting some things. Okay. Why are we sponsoring all these guys? Why are we, why do they have villas and why do they have these great lands? I could just reacquire those lands, sell it, and make some money. And then these same folks would go to the either the Senate or they would go to the Caesars and be like, hey, no, we can't do that. We needed cuts elsewhere because the gods are going to be upset if we can't, intervene on your behalf. Okay? Read that one. And that's the last part, and then we're going to click on the last one.
The Arvels offered prayer and sacrifice to Roman state gods at various temples for the continued welfare of the imperial family on their birthdays, accession anniversaries, and to mark extraordinary events such as the quashing of conspiracy or revolt.
Okay. So, again, you cannot separate religion from politics in ancient Rome. Okay. Do the last part. Oh, we already read that. Now we'll read this part right here.
The Vestals were a public priesthood of 6 women devoted to the cultivation of Vesta, goddess of the hearth of the Roman state and its vital flame. A girl chosen to be a Vestal achieved unique religious distinction, public status, and privileges, and could exercise considerable political influence. These priestesses were the only women not required to be under the legal guardianship of a man, instead answering directly to the Pontifex Maximus. A Vestal's dress represented her status outside the usual categories that define Roman women, with elements of both virgin bride and daughter and Roman matron and wife. Vestals were freed of the traditional obligations of marrying and producing children and were required to take a vow of chastity that was strictly enforced. A Vestal polluted by the loss of her chastity while in office was buried alive. Her privileges required her to be fully devoted to the performance of her duties, which were considered essential to the security of Rome.
Okay. So here you have a group of women that only answer directly to this guy called the Pontifex Maximus. Okay. The word Pontifex Maximus means the great bridge builder. Okay. We're going to do a whole study on this Pontifex Maximus, but this is a title that was of Roman pagan origin. Okay. Pontifex Maximus came from pagan religious origins. Right? Now, these women, once they were selected, they were to remain virgins for the duration of their service. They also had to dress completely differently from all other women. Okay? A lot of these things, later on we will find out, start actually coming into Christianity. Right? A lot of these same practices did not have biblical origin. They had pagan religious origins. Right? So we'll leave it at that for now. But this is just to show that this is during Roman times, pre the rise of the Christian church, right? Because at this point, still, they're being persecuted. Christians are still being persecuted, right? Let's go back here. And now the Roman emperors, who are the godsmen. Here we're going to talk about the Roman imperial cult.
The Roman imperial cult identified emperors and some members of their families with the divinely sanctioned authority, auctoritas, of the Roman state. Its framework was based on Roman and Greek precedents and was formulated during the early Principate of Augustus. The official offer of cultus to a living emperor acknowledged his office and rule as divinely approved and constitutional. His principate should therefore demonstrate pious respect for traditional republican deities and mores. The granting of apotheosis served religious, political, and moral judgment on imperial rulers and allowed living emperors to associate themselves with well-regarded lineage of imperial divi. The imperial cult was inseparable from that of Rome's official deities, whose cult was essential to Rome's survival and whose neglect was therefore treasonous. Traditional cult was a focus of imperial revivalist legislation under Decius and Diocletian. Many of the rites, practices, and status distinctions that characterized the cult to emperors were perpetuated in the theology and politics of the Christianized empire.
Okay, so let's look at a couple of things here. It's essential to Rome's survival, and anyone who neglected to participate in this cult of the emperor was seen as what?
Treasonous.
Treason. Okay? So the vast majority of Christians, they weren't killed because they were necessarily Christian. What were they being killed for?
Treason.
Treason. It is treason to not bow down to the idol of the emperor. Okay? Here's something else that I want us to look in on. Many of the rites and practices and status distinctions that characterize the cult of the emperor were perpetuated in the theology and politics of the Christianized empire. What does this mean? A lot of the same things that people would do for the emperors in this cultist religion somehow permeated into the Christian world. Right? We can already see the Vestal Virgins permeated into the Christian world. We see that how people would interact with their emperors, okay, permeated into the Christian world. This is a good primer to see what's coming next. Okay? How many more churches do we have? 5 more. We have 5 more churches, which means how many cycles do we have left?
5.
5 more cycles. Okay? So we can already see that during this time, okay, there's already the pagan influences of the Roman Empire have a foothold in Christianity. Does that make sense? All right. I wouldn't say a foothold, I'd say a toehold. Right now it's still at the toehold. So guess what happens? There's a persecution that results. Christians are martyred, causing the further spread of the gospel as they die. Okay? So just like in Jerusalem, as the Jews persecuted the Christians, are the Christians likely to hang out or get out of Dodge?
Get out.
And as soon as they leave and they get to their next place, the inevitable question will be, why are you here? Okay? You know, about a year ago, I moved from Maryland to Ohio. Guess what the first question most people asked me was? Why are you here? Okay? That is a perfect opportunity for me to explain why I'm here. The same thing happened with the Christians. Okay? On top of that, once again, the deities of the time were very detached from the people. It was a very transactional relationship. Okay? Most people would not feel in the slightest need to die for their deities. But they couldn't really understand why they would die for a deity that was a Jewish carpenter, not the thunder god of, you know, Olympus or the heavens, right? Big difference here in scope and grandeur, right? This crazy bearded lightning throwing god, the sun god, or a Jewish carpenter that, you know, said, turn the other cheek. So now Christians have this opportunity to minister, but they also can minister in their death. Because whether they give the message verbally or they give the message through their experience, it makes an impact. And their death actually makes the religion grow. Right? the pagan priests and God's men begin to lose their grasp on power, and the Pax Romana comes to an end. So God says, okay, you've had this peaceful time, but because you refuse to be peaceful, I will not be peaceful with you. Okay? Does this make sense?
Yes.
Does this align with the pattern of what happened to Jesus is happening to his people?
Yep.
Does it also align with the pattern of don't be on the receiving end of hurting God's people?
Well, what we studied about last week for sure.
Okay. So now let's go to the application piece. Okay. Christ never promised us that he would keep us from trials. Nowhere in the scriptures will you see, I will keep you from these trials. There are times where God says, I will shield you. Okay. Like the analogy is like he will cover us, like a hen covers their chicks. Okay. But let me ask you a question. Let's say there's a hen out there and a storm's brewing. And so the hen goes over there and covers the chicks with her wings. Did she stop the storm? What did she do?
Protected.
She protected them during the storm. So were the chicks still experiencing the storm?
Yeah.
Okay. So here, oops. Oh, thing went crazy. All right. He promises that we will go through trials, but that he is with us. The world hated him. They will also hate us. Okay. So let's look at God's promises here.
John 16:33, I have told you these things so that in me you may have peace. In the world you will have tribulation, but be of good cheer. I have overcome the world.
Okay, so again, that's a promise. You will have troubles, but don't worry about it. I've overcome the world, meaning this. Because I've overcome the world and resurrected, meaning this, he died. Right?
It's like, spoiler alert, I win.
Yes. But not only that, he's like, I went through trials and I died. Remember what he said to the church of Smyrna? The one who was alive, who is died, but who lives again. He's reminding us, saying, hey, even if the trials of this life take your life, you don't have to worry about it because I'm alive. I'm alive, and I can in turn make you alive. Okay? Read this one.
John 17:14-16, I have given them your word, and the world has hated them because they are not of the world, just as I am not of the world. I do not pray that you should take them out of the world, but that you should keep them from the evil one. They are not of the world, even as I am not of the world.
Okay, so even here, he understands that who has reign in this world?
The evil one.
But he's saying, don't take them out. Don't take them out because they are showing everyone that can see that they are not like the world. They are not like the evil one. All right? Specifically because as people see that Christians should not be like everybody else, okay? They should be attracted to that, not repulsed by it. Okay? Read that.
Matthew 10:16-18, look, I am sending you out as sheep in the midst of wolves. Therefore be wise as serpents and harmless as doves. But beware of men, for they will deliver you up to the councils, and they will scourge you in their synagogues. You will be brought before governors and kings for my sake, for a testimony against them and the Gentiles.
All right. So what we see here again, God is not saying, I don't know what's going on. Okay. He's not saying, I will stop you from experiencing trials and persecution, all these other things. He's like, no, I will be in there with you. Right? Daniel's friends. Did God spare them from the fire?
No.
But where was God?
In the fire.
Okay. How about Daniel? Did God spare Daniel from the lion's den?
No.
But where was God?
When in the lions.
Okay. Christ won't ask us to go through anything he has not already suffered. That is extremely, in my opinion, fair. Okay? Go ahead and read. Oh, you already read that one. You read that one. Right here, read that.
Matthew 10:21-24, the brother will deliver up the brother to death, and the father the child. And the children will rise up against their parents and cause them to be put to death. You will be hated by all men for my name's sake, but he who endures to the end will be saved. But when they persecute you in this city, escape into another. For truly I say to you, you will not have gone through the cities of Israel before the Son of Man comes. The disciple is not above his teacher, nor the servant above his master.
Okay, so is Jesus our master or
Yeah.
our servant?
He's our master.
And did he go through it?
Yes.
So if he went through it, why should we be, why should we not experience what he did?
Right.
Okay. Is he our teacher?
Yep.
We are his disciple, right? So if they did it to the teacher, who are we to think we should avoid this? Right?
Matthew 10:28, do not fear those who kill the body, but are not able to kill the soul, but rather fear him who is able to destroy both soul and body in hell.
So what is Jesus saying here?
They might kill you, but don't worry, because I can fix that.
Read this.
John
We already
13,
read that one. Read this one.
John 15:18-25. If the world hates you, you know that it hated me before it hated you. If you were of the world would love you as its own, but because you were not of the world, since I chose you out of the world therefore hates you. Remember the word that I said to you, a servant is not greater than his master. If they persecuted me, they will also persecute you. If they kept my words, they will keep yours also. But all these things they will do to you for my name's sake, because they do not know him who sent me. If I had not come and spoken to them, they would not have had sin. But now they have no excuse for their sin. He who hates me hates my Father also. If I had not performed among them the works which no one else did, they would have no sin. But now they have seen and hated both my Father and me. But the word which is written in their law might be fulfilled. They hated me without a cause.
Right. So once again, same drumbeat as before. Okay. Christ won't ask us to go through anything he hasn't already suffered. Did Jesus get sent to prison?
Yep.
Did Jesus get beaten?
Yep.
Did Jesus even get executed?
Yep.
Okay. So can we honestly tell Jesus, you don't understand? When we face persecutions and trials, it's like, well, you don't get it. What is Jesus going to say?
I get it.
Been there, done that. So he knows how we feel. He knows that it's an injustice. When we see the injustices that happen in the world, he knows that because he experienced the injustice. There has never been somebody more innocent throughout all of human history than Jesus. But yet, he died. He was mistreated, ignored, neglected, all those things. He gets it. Okay? We can take comfort in his promises that as we go through the trials, he overcame. Right? He's like, I did it, so I will be with you and I will guide you along so you can get through this also. Right? There will always be false Christians that unwittingly follow Satan within our midst. Remember, in the church, they said, I know the blasphemy of those who say they are Jews, but are not. There are fakers out there. And guess where they are? They're not claiming to be something else. They're claiming to be what? Christians. We also barely touched on it, but the next church we're going to study it even more was a group called the Traditors. Remember we brought them up? These were people that when the trials came, when the persecutions came, what did they do?
They negotiated.
They negotiated. They compromise. They say, oh, the emperor wants me to bow down at his shrine. Jesus, I'm still with you. Oh, let me bow at the shrine. But Jesus, I'm still with you. Does that make sense? It's like, well, do they know that you're still with Jesus? Because what you've shown them is that you're with this imperial cult. Does that make sense? You can try to justify your actions, right? Well, I need to accommodate them because if not, it's going to be extremely uncomfortable for me. But don't worry, I'm still faithful to you. Right? Something Jesus said is, those that testify of me, I will testify of you to my Father. If you're proud of me, I'm proud of you. If you're willing to stick your neck out for me, I already stuck my neck out for you. Okay? So we can try to reconcile this thing by saying, well, I'm going to play along, but I'm really a closet Christian. That's what these traditors did. Okay? That's not good for God. Because it doesn't show the people that are hurting you that they're doing it for the wrong reasons. Okay? There's a blessing is pronounced for those who read and accept and follow his counsel. And there is a curse pronounced for those who corrupt, distort, and reject his counsel. Okay? So that's the applicability piece of it. We need to understand that in this life, there will be struggles. There will be trials. Just as there were for Jesus and the early church. Okay? Right now, I would say that at least in this country, we have it pretty good. And by we, I mean Christians. We have it pretty good. All right? There are places in this world where Christians to this day face a lot of persecution. They do. God is with them. Right? What we need to understand is to not get too comfortable when we have it very good. We need to, when it's good, strengthen our relationship with God. All right? Make it strong now when things are easier, because there's going to come a time of crisis. And when that crisis hits, are we going to stand firm or are we going to accommodate? Does that make sense?
Mm-hmm.
All right. Do you have any final observations for what we learned about this second cycle?
No, I think that the introduction is the perfect conclusion. What happened to Jesus is going to happen to his followers. There is the only promise is that we will have trials. That's the only promise. But then the other part of the promise is that he wins. We don't want to be on the opposite side.
All right. So I'm going to give a primer for the next study that we're going to do. And the next study is going to be Pergamum. All right. And there's an adage that I think is extremely apropos for what's going to happen here. Have you ever heard of I'm going to say something and you finish it. If you can't beat them,
join them.
Okay. What we're going to find out is the devil only has 2 strategies. If you can't beat them, join them. Okay? For all the persecution of Smyrna, did the devil beat the church?
Nope.
No. So we're going to see where he goes from here. Remember that adage, you can't beat them, join them.
Right? And spoiler alert, in every single session of every single study that we do, God wins. That's the spoiler. He wins. So it doesn't matter what the devil's strategies are. I think that it's important for us to become aware so that we're not caught unaware, that we're not caught with our pants down. But the moral of the story is God is bigger, God wins. The end.
Sure. But it also helps us understand where we're at. Okay. Yeah. So I just said right now, our Christian world, at least here where we are now, is pretty relaxed, right? I would argue very few, if any, Christians are actively being persecuted in our country. So if we're not being beaten, I'll just leave it there. If we're not being beaten, what strategy is the devil using now? All right, there's only two. And if he isn't using one of them, what is he using? Okay, so I'll go ahead and pray, and next week we'll talk about Pergamum. Dear Heavenly Father, thank you, Lord, that you've shown us through your word that you've promised us, Lord, there will be struggles, there will be trials, because as you are not of this world, Lord, we are your followers, neither should we be. That this world rejected you, and they will reject us. But even though we will face these trials, and we will face these struggles, and these persecutions, and these rough spots, that you will be there with us, Lord, and that you have overcome. That even if the worst happen, that we die, Lord, and we are killed for your name's sake, that you will claim our name to the Father and call us voice of the archangel. Holy name.